Welcome to Keep Sweet, the Positive World podcast. I am your host, Joshua Gonzalez, and I welcome you today to another episode. We are now in March, headed towards those spring months, and I cannot wait to go on a walk in New York City, around the block, around the town, around wherever I want to go, with just a nice little light jacket and just get to just be outside and warm and free. I asked my husband, Matt, earlier today, like, what is he going to do whenever we get vaccinated and we are able to just go out and be, and he said, run. So I don't know if he'll be allowed. But I definitely feel that way too. I just want to be free. In today's episode, we are going to have our good news bite for the week, actually. And then I also have an interview coming up with an awesome immigration attorney who is a dancer, and he is spending a lot of his time helping artists get their visas, helping foreign-born artists get their visas. So that's an amazing interview coming up. But first, I want to talk about this story today. Ford, the automaker, is to produce a clear N95 mask to benefit the deaf community and ease communication. So it is an N95 mask that works just as effective as all the others, but the front of it is clear so that people can see facial expressions and get that communication across, and they can also read lips if they need to. And it does seem like this is a much bigger engineering project than you would think, because it still has to filter out 95% of airborne particles, as well as at the same time use some anti-fog technology so that the clear panel doesn't fog up and you can't see it anyway. So they have developed it and they're pending approval as of now, but it should be released this spring. So yeah, how about that? People are doing amazing things in the world to make it more accessible, and I hope that we continue moving forward because there is a lot more challenges that people face, and we need to make the world more accessible. So yeah, congrats to Ford, snaps to Ford today, and that is our good news for this week. And now let's get on to that interview. Today's guest is a successful lawyer turned professional dancer while also being an accomplished pianist on the side. He is a very kind soul who now uses his law talents to help fellow artists navigate our country's immigration maze. Please welcome to the podcast, Justin Lynch.
Thank you for that introduction.
Introducing people is my favorite thing because I get to harp on what I love about them the most. I mean, there's plenty to love about all my guests, but these are the things I pick out the most. So I honestly think I only do this podcast just to introduce people. So first of all, how are you? How have you been lately in this crazy time that we're living in?
I have been pretty good. I've been finding ways to keep myself busy, both through work and through playing the piano and taking Zoom classes from time to time. I was able to go to visit my family in Jamaica for 5 weeks, which was lovely. Although I also want to say it wasn't fully vacation. It was also family stuff that had to be dealt with, but it was lovely to be in Jamaica for a very cold period in New York City.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was able to spend 5 weeks there, and I got back maybe about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So lots of snowstorms.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't, even though I guess all the circumstances weren't the best, I still would appreciate and love a little getaway to a warmer place like Jamaica.
Yeah.
That is great. So I want to start our conversation today talking a little bit about how you ended up where you ended up, because your life is incredible, amazing. You do so many things, and not only do you do them, but you do them so well. And so I have always wanted to ask and have a conversation with you about how, what drew you to law, and then also what drew you to dance, and which one came first? Because I think that you kind of were more the law track and then ended up going the dance track. Okay, yes, you're nodding. Okay. So
That
how did that
is,
happen and
yeah,
come
that's
about?
correct. So the way it happened was, well, really music came first, and I was
Mm.
in, I did my undergrad in piano, but I was at a university. So, and at some point during my piano studies, I was like, oh, I was feeling quite disillusioned with my piano playing, and I decided I wanted to do a double major. So I ended up adding a international relations major, which is completely useless degree.
I mean, I think like half of degrees are probably useless. So you still did great.
Yeah. So I, so I, I was a double major in undergrad with piano and international relations, and I was also coming out of the closet at that time. And I remember taking this political science course where we had to read a lot of Supreme Court cases. I just really enjoyed reading them, and I enjoy, like, we did a lot of like the gay rights cases, and I got it into my head that I could go to law school and be a civil rights attorney or a human rights attorney.
That's
That
incredible.
didn't quite work out. Like, basically, as soon as I got to law school, I realized that there are people there who were way more passionate about human rights and civil rights than I was. So I kind of let them have it.
And you know what? That's all good. Like if you're not super passionate about it, don't spend your entire life doing it.
Right,
You
exactly.
know?
Exactly.
But you ended up finishing law school.
I ended up finishing law school, yes. And oh, so like that was also, I started dancing while I was in law school. I had
Oh,
a
okay.
friend from Jamaica who is one of my closest friends who was in the visa program. Speaking of immigration,
Hmm.
was in the visa program at Perry Dance. And so I just started following her to class at Perry Dance. And that was how my love of dance started.
And you were how old?
So I took a year off before I started law school. So I guess I was 22 when I started law school, but I don't think I followed her to Perry Dance until my second year of law school. So I guess I was maybe 23.
Wow.
And yeah, after I graduated, I went and worked for a big law firm for 2 years. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to like try to be a dancer while while there's still a chance, while I'm not, I mean, I was already too old, but I wasn't like,
I mean, but obviously you weren't because you still have had a great career.
thank you. Yeah, but I was like maybe 27, 28. It was
That's
time. If I was
incredible.
going to try to be a dancer, it was time to
Yeah.
like, it was kind of a now or never
Yeah.
moment.
And so what
So I
was your
quit the job, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, that was my question. I was like, so, so you just were like, you know what? Now or never. I can always come back to law.
Yeah.
Peace. And then how did you like book your first gig or start on that career?
So I took 1 year just to take a lot of class because at that point I still was not a great dancer. So I just spent 1 year taking a whole lot of class, and people started asking me to, like, if I could come to rehearsals, if I could perform with them, and that's kind of how it was. And at first it was like unpaid, and
Sure.
then gradually I started auditioning for like paid gigs, and that's how that's how I started getting gigs.
That's incredible. And I think it's so important to highlight, I think you're the epitome of when you know how to learn, you can be successful at anything you do. And I love that you didn't go in so blindly to try to like get these gigs. You were like, you know what? I need to learn. I need to go to class. I need to spend the time to learn the discipline, the trade, the whatever you're trying to pursue, actually learn it and internalize it so that you can perform at and compete at a professional level.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
So
Part
you
of it was me.
sure.
I knew that I had natural talent, but I was also really, I was nervous. I had a lot of self doubts. So that also was part of like me being like, girl, you need to like take some class and learn how this is really done.
I mean, but you still did it. So that's like still incredible. And I totally understand having the self-doubts. I mean, especially throwing yourself into something so different than
Yeah.
previous things that you've done before. And speaking of that, we don't see a lot of people hold these types of high studious, high degree jobs like doctor, lawyer, PhD, while also having these being so successful in these artistic disciplines. I'm wondering why you think that might be, because I feel, I mean, obviously there is the huge time commitments that you have to put into both at the same time, but I feel like you still have to practice the discipline every day. Like it's still kind of like the same process to be a lawyer than to be an artist. You know what I mean? I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Okay, so there's two questions really in what you just said.
Correct.
So like with regard to the first one, I actually think, there are more dancer lawyers than you think.
Ooh.
Actually.
They're like secret lawyer dancers out there.
There are, because they kind of come out of the woodwork. Like there was a article in Dance Magazine a few years about my dance lawyer life, and people were coming out of the woodwork to say, I am also a dancer lawyer, or I am a lawyer. Like and sometimes they find me on LinkedIn. There are many more people than you think, and I also meet quite a few of them in Jamaica. Like there's something about Jamaicans that are there are a lot of dancer lawyers in Jamaica. And I also met someone who is a dancer who is also she then became a professor of law at Boston University, and she was a dancer on the scene in New York for a while, and then went to Boston to join their law faculty. So I am definitely not an isolated case. But yeah, you're right. It is something that requires, daily practice. I mean, for a year, I really wasn't a lawyer at all.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's not exactly like dance in that way. Certainly in terms of like being an immigration attorney, which is what I now do, that is something that does require, especially during Trump years, being like really on top of things, and like it's not really something you can like step away from and then come back to.
Yeah, so I mean that's a perfect segue. I want to know more about how you drifted into the immigration law and how your kind of practice is currently with that. Like, are you kind of like I don't know how lawyers work. Are you like a freelance?
Okay, so after I quit my law job and took my year off to like be a better dancer.
Oh, be a better dancer, sure. That sounds better.
First I tried to have my own law firm because I was okay. I'm not like earning enough money from just being a dancer. So first I tried to have my own law firm, which was not. I didn't know how to do that, and it was not a success. And then I started working at a small law firm in the city, and pretty much they allow me to set my own schedule, and sometimes like I bring in clients to the firm, or sometimes they have clients that they give to me, and because so when I worked at the big firm, I was doing corporate law, so basically that is like helping people draft contracts, helping people form businesses, which is something, because it doesn't involve ever having to go to court, you kind of can do it on your own schedule. So it's very suited to being a dancer. Okay, so then how did I get into immigration is that I was on the dance scene, rehearsing with people and taking class with people. And I met all these dancers who were like freaking out about their artist visas. And I eventually was like, you know what? Like, I could do that. I should learn how to do people's artist visas.
You should.
So yeah, I learned how to do it. Like I asked a friend who had gone through the process. I asked her for her artist visa application so I could study it. And I had a friend of mine at the big firm that I had left who was an immigration attorney. And so she became my mentor and taught me how immigration law works. That's how it started.
So when it comes to the immigration system in America, I'm sure it's not necessarily your favorite thing. What are some of the hardest challenges you faced in some of your cases?
The persistent one is that often when people are applying for an artist visa, they are coming straight out of school. They're coming straight out of like a BFA program. And they don't necessarily, the immigration system has like various standards that you have to meet in order to prove that you are deserving of an artist visa. And for someone who's like just out of school, it often requires a bit more creativity to like mold what they have done into language that convinces an immigration officer that they deserve the visa, because they don't necessarily have their qualifications don't necessarily like jump off of the page.
Right.
That's certainly a challenge, and like it requires a fair amount of creativity.
And I'm sure that's harder for an artist versus like someone who's working at like a corporate job or in a position where someone's able to be like, no, they're a huge asset to this company because of their skills and whatever, versus an artist. It's like really hard to prove your worth and your work to people who aren't artists as it is, let alone trying to get a visa for it, you know?
Right. And well, so like there are different visa types. Like someone who is working at an office and a big corporation wouldn't necessarily be applying for the same type of a visa that an artist would. There's like a special type of visa for people in the arts.
So going through this process, and you've been through many times, I feel like there are probably some absurd like laws that we still have in this country. Do you feel that? And do you have any that you're just like, why does this exist? This doesn't really help anyone or anything at this moment.
Well, the Trump administration made so many changes to the immigration system that made sense if your whole goal is to clamp down on every type of immigration, both legal and illegal. But a lot of those measures are unfair and stupid. Like, I only deal with a very narrow section of immigration law, which is mainly helping artists get artists and visas and green cards. But one of the major things that Trump did was he implemented this Stay in Mexico program where you apply if you're applying for asylum at the border and you're not from Mexico, you have to stay in Mexico and apply from Mexico, which is not the way it has been done before. And it has just led to people camping out in these tent cities for months at a time and being subjected to all sorts of criminality.
Yeah.
That's just an unfair and inhumane measure that he put into place, among many others, such as like decreasing the numbers of people that would be granted asylum, and so like Muslim ban. Well, thankfully, Biden has stopped Muslim ban and has started to reverse the Stay in Mexico policy. I mean, but there's so many others that whatever. I mean, I could go on and on.
I think we all are not surprised that you could go on and on and on, especially about a certain administration and their changes. So now that Biden's administration are starting to make some changes, hopefully all positive or mostly positive, what changes are you already seeing? Are you seeing a lot of them already, or do you know of any in the pipeline or something like that?
There is Biden's new immigration bill, which was just presented maybe 2 days ago, which I have not delved into. But
Justin, you gotta stay on top of it.
You know, it's from the immigration chatter that I hear among immigration attorneys. It's not predicted to pass as it is in its current form. But it does present a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. It does propose to eliminate. So there's something called the 3-year ban and the 10-year ban, which people can be permanently. So there's a 3-year ban, there's a 10-year ban, and there's a permanent ban. People can be excluded from the United States for 10 years, 3 years, or permanently, depending on things that they've done in the United States. Like if they've worked without authorization, like if they come on O1 visa, for example, that's the artist visa, and they start working for like a tech company and doing something completely unrelated to their field, and they do that for long enough, they can be subject to a 310 or permanent ban from the country. This new legislation proposes eliminating that, which would be fantastic.
That would be fantastic because that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. And like, of course, I knew that was probably a part of the process, but it's just so dumb and unfair,
Yeah.
especially like giving how much the government helps its own citizens or doesn't help its own citizens in the economy and their economic situations, to have someone who is taking on whatever work they can get just to survive. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're banned from the country without doing anything that's like criminally illegal is just
And like sometimes I had one of my clients actually get a 3-year ban, and it was a mistake.
uh,
But after they applied for the visa, the consulate was like, "We not only deny your visa, but we're also giving you this 3-year ban." And it was a mistake, but they refused to acknowledge it. And it was only like after fighting them for months that they relented and changed their mind. But she was going to get excluded from the country for 3 years.
that's insane. And I'm so glad that she had you fighting for her and you know your stuff. I mean, it sounds like you don't know this Biden plan yet. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so glad that you do know your stuff and you're able to help these people who need people like you fighting for them against these unfair policies. So, as you're seeing change happen, what are some of your biggest wishes for the immigration system?
Well, I have wishes. I have wishes that I know will not be granted.
Sure.
The way that the like artist visa, we haven't really gotten into the way that it works. It doesn't really match the reality of how artists work.
Ooh,
Like you,
so fill us in a little bit about that.
so you can get an artist visa. I've been saying artist visa. The real term is O1B
Mm.
visa. You can get an O1B visa for up to 3 years before you have to renew it. But in order to get it for 3 years, you have to show that you have work lined up for 3 years. And for artists who like freelance, that's really a tall order
Mm-hmm.
to show immigration that you have freelance work lined up for 3 years. Like, I'm going to be working with this choreographer and this choreographer and this choreographer, and all, like, I have my 3-year like contracts for the next 3 years.
That's
That is
insane.
a really difficult thing to accomplish.
I've never had a contract lined up more than like a year and a half, maybe at
No,
most.
no. So it's like, I mean, people can often like cobble together something, like if a dance company knows that it always does their like Nutcracker in December, or it always has APAP in January, that at least have like some predictable gigs,
Mm-hmm.
and they know they'll have rehearsals leading up to APAP or Nutcracker. So often, or they have like they always have a summer intensive or a winter intensive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ways, but
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't match the way that we work. I mean, my wish would be that you like prove that you have enough qualifications to get this visa, and then maybe you show some work lined up. But I don't think you should have to like prove that you have like 3 years of work lined up in order to be here for
Yeah.
3 years. That's my wish. It will never happen because that's just the way that work visas work. Like for all types of work visas, you have to show that you have work.
Mm.
So my reasonable wish for the immigration system is that we start again treating people like human beings, like treating immigrants like human beings. That has not been the case for the past 4 years. We have vilified immigrants, not only Trump and his cronies, but
Yeah.
it has seeped into the way that immigration petitions and immigration applications are scrutinized and adjudicated. It's just this vilification of immigrants. And it feels like, I don't know what is in people's heads, but it feels like on the receiving end, like just a wish to deny as many applications as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So my wish is that we once again acknowledge the contributions and the sacrifices that immigrants have made to this country, and that we actually treat them like people.
Yeah. Imagine treating people like people.
It's
It's
what a
so
concept.
it's so sad that that has to be a wish, and it's crazy. And I hope that we do see some new changes coming down the pipeline very fast, especially with this new administration. And
Yeah.
now that both both houses of the Congress.
Yeah.
Look at me trying to be a political podcast. I just hope that now that all of these new people who are currently in power, we are able to hold their feet to the fire, and that everyone who voted for them does hold their feet to the fire,
Yeah.
and that these new changes come about because they're long overdue and we need them, and immigrants get the job done. Hashtag Hamilton. And especially now, I was just reading an article the other day about how the birth rate of the US is so low, and how that basically spells trouble for the economy in a little ways down the pipeline, and how we may have to look towards immigration to help us out even a bit more. And so it's just like, oh my God, like immigrants just seem to be the gift that keeps on giving. And again, we keep vilifying them, and that needs to stop.
I agree 100% with everything you just said.
Yay. So where can people find you? Do you want to be found? I always ask, where can people find you, before I even ask my guests if they want to be found.
People can find me on Instagram, which frankly is not like, I mean, okay, so we've been talking about my whole life. Like my Instagram is not just about law. It's also just like stupid stuff too. But people can find me at Leaping Lawyer on Instagram. Yeah, that's also my Twitter, but like I don't really tweet, so don't find me there.
Okay. So we know to find him on Instagram. And we also got the warning that you will see a whole person and not just a lawyer and or a dancer that we have talked about, because Justin is much more than that. Don't put him in a box.
That's right. Well,
thank you so much for being on. I just love you. You were just so inspirational and cool and doing such good things. I can't wait to do more stuff with you.
Same, Joshua. Thank you. It's been great talking to you and catching up.
And thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned a lot from Justin, and I hope you get inspired by him and his story and how he can basically do everything. If you like this episode, please rate the episode, review the episode. It really helps get the podcast out there. And also feel free to DM me some feedback on Instagram. I am at Josh Wadham. Whatever feedback you may have, let me know. I want to make this show better for you. And also, if you have any suggestions for good news stories or people you would like to hear on the podcast, feel free to email them in at KeepSweetPodcast@gmail.com. That is the email for this podcast. And I'll read every email. It's me. I'm just reading it. And I love to take your suggestions because I want to make this the best for you. So go out, do something great for somebody else this week, and I will see you next Thursday. And as always, keep sweet.